What have you been talking about?
We've been talking about the Mahdi or the Mehdi, the new Messiah.
The new Messiah.
Yeah,
There's always a
Jesus
new
2.0.
Messiah. I mean, yeah, we can just talk right straight out about how bad the Messiah is.
The Messiah doesn't exist in the 5 books of Moses,
Mm-hmm.
It basically doesn't even exist in the Old Testament. And everybody's like, check Isaiah,
Yeah.
and it's like,
Yeah.
all right, guys, chill out, That is not good enough basis for you guys to say that there's going to be a salvation. Not to mention that most of the things in the Old Testament are very cryptic, like it's not tactical. It's not written down as history. It's a very bizarre dialogue between Isaiah and God. His overall message gets out, but to kind of dwell on these little talking points is definitely not enough to support a Messiah. Not to mention that if Christ is the ultimate Messiah, like nothing has changed in the past 2,000 years. I think people need to be very evident about that. Like as an American living here in California, it's been 2,024 years and nothing has changed. There's still death, murder, sin, horror, Satanism, and nothing has actually changed. So this Messiah worship is a great disease, and it's terrible. It's just terrible.
Do you think it's worth? Do you think it's worth respecting the words of Isaiah as true prophecy?
Yeah, I mean, you can respect it.
I respect it, yeah, but I'm not dwelling on it. No.
Mm-hmm. Do you think his prophecy that a figure is going to come is true?
I mean, he never actually foretells anything explicit. Again, it's vague where he talks about the servant of God, the one who has the Spirit of God resting on him, like the descendant of David. And again, the descendant of David could even be metaphorical in a sense as well. But the truth is, God promised David the throne for eternity if his descendants followed God, and Solomon kind of messed that up, So it doesn't mean that there's necessarily a second chance. I don't even know all this stuff.
To be honest with you, out of everything that I read in the Old Testament, the most accurate prophecy that you could perhaps point to is, I forget if it's Isaiah, Ezekiel, or Hezekiah. I can't tell you which one.
Hezekiah.
No, sorry, excuse me,
Ezekiel.
Amos. Amos, not Hezekiah. And it says something, and I could find it as well. It says that the leaders will mislead you, and woman will dominate you.
That's Isaiah.
Yeah. Right, and that's the most accurate one that I can think of. As
there's so many accurate ones, and then there's just some that if you were to follow these vague references, you'd have to create entirely new belief systems, which is not at all warranted by the Torah. In the Torah, you're not obligated to believe in a Messiah. You're not obligated to believe in a resurrection of the dead and all these things, which Judaism claims to be a fundamental principle, right? So it's just not true.
Let's also remember that even if there was a prophet, he can be led astray by other things, right? There's a direct story. I don't think it's in the Torah. You remind me about the donkey. There was an angel on the path.
That is
Balaam.
The story of Balaam.
Balaam, yeah. Right? Can you recount the story, exactly what happens?
Yeah, so I mean, the king of Moab, Balak, wants Balaam, who was a prophet, a non-Jewish prophet, to come curse the Israelites. And God tells him not to go, then God tells him you can go, but you're only going to do what I say. And then he gets on the road, and then an angel starts to try to block him in the road, and only his donkey sees the angel, but he doesn't see the angel. So the donkey keeps going to the side, and finally he walks up against the wall, and he's crushing him against the wall, and he starts beating the donkey. He's like, "What's wrong with you?" And then the donkey opens its mouth and starts talking and says, "Why are you beating me? I've been your donkey for all these years." It's like, "There's an angel in front of you." And then the angel appears, and Balaam sees him, and he's like, "Oh, okay." He realized that he would only be able to do what God tells him to do, and then obviously he goes to curse the Israelites, and he can only bless them again and again. So that's the story.
Okay. So that's exactly the point of the prophet not doing as what he's expected to do, or not. I guess that is prophecy, right? What if God tells you to say a certain thing or do a certain thing?
Right.
He's prophesizing. I mean, do you think there are instances
Actually,
in which someone can prophesize without any divine revelation by God?
Well, that just wouldn't be prophecy. That would be
What do you call that?
raving lunacy.
What about Isaiah?
Delusion. I mean, the whole point is, by the way, the Torah gives the criteria for a true prophecy. It's like, if it comes true, then you know it's true. It's a very straightforward thing. Like, if Jesus flies out of heaven, and the second coming comes, or like, so the Jewish Rebbe comes with his long beard and says, everyone, it's time to return to the Rebbe. Saying like, let your prophecy play out.
But do
you
you
actually
think
it's true?
What you mentioned earlier about the woman ruling men.
Can we just take a moment and kind of like draw like a line in the middle on like prophecies that actually happened and statements that you can derive this from? So the most accurate one in the 5 books, and this is before the 5 books was written, if you're viewing it as a historical narrative, that God puts Abraham into a deep sleep and he tells him that his lineage is going to be slaves in the land of Egypt for 400 years.
It's interesting. He doesn't
he's going
say
to take
Egypt.
them out.
He says
going to be strangers in a
land.
strange land. Yeah. But I'm saying that
yes, foretells that history.
There's going to be slavery for 400 years, and I'm going to take them out with a strong hand as well. That happened. That was a prophecy. So we got like check, Abraham, prophecy.
We also have Deuteronomy that says that the Israelites will disobey God and be exiled and spread across the world.
I was even going to go just chronologically. I was going to go with what you were saying is Balaam, right? Balaam is prophesizing with God and is known for his ability to prophesize with God. That's why he's like the all-seeing, all-knowing Balaam. They talk about his third eye is open. He's very whimsical with his language, and he refers directly to Yahweh. And Yahweh tells him, only which I tell you what will come from your mouth, that will only come from your mouth. And he is trying to curse the nation on the mountain, but when he talks to Balak, who's angry at him, he's like, did I not tell you that only what God said would come from my mouth would come from my mouth? And so I think that is very telling about just how prophecy works. And then you look at God telling you, how do you identify a false prophet? Is even if the dream of the dream would be to come true, or the thing in which he said would be real, does he follow my laws, right? Which really comes back to the most important point, which is the laws. That's why I don't actually care about all of these prophecies. If these things are bound to happen, okay, go ahead and prepare for it. Okay, now that you're prepared, you still have to wake up tomorrow. You have to brush your teeth. You have to make your bed. You have to live like a human being, treating your neighbor like yourself, not stealing, So a poor gentleman just got his entire business stolen from him overnight because he cleans cars. And, what did that piece of shit do?
Somebody
stole his stole his whole car.
His car.
His car's got the chemicals, his cleaning equipment, everything, right? Where do we derive that is something negative to do? 10 Commandments.
Yeah.
Right? And so the 5 books is talking about laws. All this prophecy stuff really sends people into crazy loopholes.
It's all just forced belief, right? It's like, thou must believe this. It's like, how does that help you at all to just start believing things that have no basis and have never happened? Like it's irrelevant. It has no value. It has no value. You're not obligated to have these beliefs. The Torah does not obligate you to do that. And again, anyone who understands the Torah and reads it knows that this is the basis. And as you say, even if a prophet does manage to make things come true and perform miracles, there's a criteria above that, which is,
if he tells you to worship other gods, you shall kill him.
Yeah.
Right?
Tell him to worship other gods, tell you to go against God. And that chapter starts off with the verse, you shall not add or subtract to this commandment. Right? And so that's like the introduction to the law of the false prophet. So it's very clear when people are deviating. And like, to me, what's so crazy is how obvious it is that the Orthodox, the Pharisees, the oral Torah is just a lie. Like, it's an actual lie. If anyone has any sense in their body.
Everything about that division of Judaism, when it started. It started 2,000 years ago. If the religion of Judaism is 3,500 years ago, the term rabbi came out exactly when the Second Temple was destroyed. And you have people living in ghettos, living in 109 other countries that they were rejected from everywhere on the earth. And they were hated for being dirty and despicable. And there was no great heroes. You know, you talk about these rabbis from the rabbinic perspective, but they really weren't that accomplished or that cool. The Jews that were of accomplishment were typically non-practicing, somewhat atheistic Jews, and they were Jews by birth, by bloodline, which, by the way, comes from circumcision, again, the law. One generation later, their kids are no longer Jewish. And, what is the thing that they did? They added all of their own commandments on top of God's Torah. And so you're looking at, from their very sick and twisted point of view, that we are guilty of subtracting God's laws because all of the rabbis' laws are God's laws, right? So you'll always be the enemy in the eyes of, honestly, the Sadducee, right? Like the Christians have figured this out. You know, they have basically outed thousands of years ago that the rabbinic Jews have been scum, right? Like if there's any takeaway from the New Testament, like that would be it.
Yeah.
And that's what you see. You see the people who are the Sadducees in history
Pharisees.
The Pharisees are our problem.
Yeah.
You know,
And the Sadducees only believe in the Torah.
They became immediately out of power right after the story of Christ. You know, again, like you're supposed to have judges. They say rabbis, right? Okay, so if the rabbi is the new judge, where's the court system of rabbis that implement judges? What do you guys like, kill gays or something? Like you guys able to put people to death for not keeping the Sabbath?
They have no legal power. Plus, their laws are false and
but they don't even have a court system.
I mean, they have like a mock court system.
By the way, I wanted to
for like legal, for like monetary disputes and like conversion and marriage.
It's not actually.
No, I mean they're just
connected to a position of power.
Yeah,
they had made up their own court system that only has any power if you care to be part of their system.
Yes, they have no actual power.
There is nothing that they can implement that actually is a source of power.
Yes,
so
not
for us to listen to them is absurd.
Not only do they not have power, the laws that they do make are false and contradict the Torah.
Well, again, if you want to talk about prophecy, that would be the clearest, and I wouldn't even call it a prophecy. I would just call it a response from God, which is you don't follow my decrees and my ordinances, everything goes negatively for you, right? And so that's what you see. Everything is being negative for thousands of years for the Jews. And, you know, it's funny because I've been hearing this for a long time, that if you're unhappy with how Jewish history has been for the past 2,000 years and you want to make a change, the Orthodox response to put you down is, you think you're greater than 2,000 years of brilliant minds before you? That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard.
Brilliant.
No brilliant minds. Let's just be completely honest here. Like, Albert Einstein is not the Rebbe, okay? Albert Einstein was an atheist, you know, as close to one as you can get. He's a scientist, okay? Non-practicing Jew. He had, like, again, I'm just, like, labeling one great Jew at a time, okay? And we are small enough of a nation that everything that's going on right now is totally out of proportion, by the way. So, like, this whole Jewish problem, like, I don't even want to talk about it anymore. It just gives me a headache, you know? Like, Hasidic and Chabad and Orthodox, they're all crazy people.
Yeah.
Like, they're straight up crazy, dude. They believe in nothing logical and sound at all. And if you were to just look at, like, what are the benefits? Like, okay, I choose one community over another. Okay, God is simply made up by human beings, right? What are the benefits exactly? Like, do you guys have any that you want to share? I can share plenty, you know, of
the benefits
of societal
of
benefits
God
versus like Orthodox, Hasidic, or Chabad benefits, right? Like, we all know that, like, the Chabad girls are all sluts, right? Like, you know, they want to pretend that, like, oh, our girls are so, like, righteous and good and we don't profane them to harlotry, but, like, ultimately you're either dealing with sexless girls who listen to the bidding of the Rebbe, and they're not going to be wives and mothers, so they're not even going to be a good resource in the home. Like, if you believe in traditional values, the traditional values come from the source. The source is the 5 books. We developed tradition beyond the 5 books that's supposed to add value and flavor to your life. These people don't follow the law. I mean, they literally add a second day of holiday to every day of holiday that there is, including more holidays, and they want to blame other people for subtracting from God's laws. Like, I'm down to put the Orthodox religious Hasidic Jewish thing to rest. Honestly, if you guys are down, I'm down to talk about the Israel
No, not yet.
issue. Not yet.
Oh yeah,
You
I
have
wanted to
more?
bring
Okay,
up.
okay.
Yeah. So I watched your recent podcast with one of he's a rabbi,
Okay.
and then he brought his son along,
Yeah.
his son-in-law later on,
Yeah.
and I mean, might as well make this video, or not completely, but as a reframe of exactly what happened and all the one stupid topic that you discussed the entire time.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know where he was going with it. He was just trying every single argument to prove you wrong, and none of it went through.
Yeah. Well, I mean, because ultimately he is bound to the Talmudic discussion, right? Like if you read the Talmud and you're like, there must be infinite divine wisdom in these words, right? And then you read it and it's utter stupidity and nonsense. Now you have to sit there and justify why this nonsense is divine revelation, right? And so the whole conversation was that the Torah says if you burn a fire, you're responsible for your actions, right? And the Talmud says, well, what's the reason why? And it's like,
Yeah.
And then they go off and so it's an argument.
Wait. I think the stupidest part that I heard was when he's like, where does the fire go, out or up?
Yeah. He's like
there's a tree.
Yeah, there's a tree. It goes up in the sky. I was like, you're
missing the point.
so
Did you see this?
disconnected from reality.
Dude, I've seen it, but I've also been in hours and hours of conversations like that.
But just so you can see
way
how,
of thinking,
how retarded
it's
it
a
is.
taught way
right?
of thinking.
Like, it's an argument between Rabbi Yochanan and Reish Lakish, where Rabbi Yochanan says you're obligated for your fire because it's like you shot your arrow. And Reish Lakish says you're obligated for your fire because it's your money. And it's like, what? Like, you're obligated for your fire because you burned a fire.
It doesn't.
And because God said so.
They're trying to use all these different.
Like, even when you're explaining it, I still don't understand.
No, you have to zone out.
I just hear it as like nonsensical information. Like,
I mean, they're trying to use analogies.
They're
trying to use analogies to prove a certain point that it can be pretty much judged in a very specific way.
Yeah.
And that's what they're trying to get across.
Unnecessary.
Yeah.
Right. And so then they have to go through this whole reason to explain why it's necessary to have this conversation to begin with. And when I tell him, like, don't you acknowledge that the Torah telling you you're obligated for your fire is sufficient? He's like, that's the greatest question of the greatest Rebbe. It's like, no, it's not a question. Also, it's a conclusion.
Could we all talk about like the most absurd thing ever? That like in every scenario and every story that exists within the rabbinical frame or the orthodoxy or the ultra religious, even on the Christian side, that like we're inserting like Eliyahu Hanavi and Elijah to like take the place of like people, and like it was Moses and a second life and redemption. I had a guy text me, and of course he believes in the Messiah. And again, part of the reason that he believes in the Messiah is also because he read in the prayer book that God's going to raise the dead, right? Like this is in the Amidah, the prayer book that you say 3 times a day. There is nothing about resurrection of the dead in the 5 books. There's actually the book tells you choose life, not death, and then these people are talking about resurrecting the dead. Like, isn't that the most satanic thing that you could possibly think of, and you're going to attest it to God as if he's doing this? I mean, look, you talk about Reish Lakish and Rabbi Yochanan. They were best friends for many years, and then he cursed his friend and killed him. That's how that story ended up. Like, that's even by the Gemara's frame. Like, go ahead and read the information that's in there, and you're going to say that these people are smart. Who is the guy? His wife is like a Bino or something like that, like Beanie. She has the most ridiculous name ever. Bruria. Oh my God. Yeah. Rabbi Meir Balhanes, right?
Yeah.
Okay, Rabbi Meir Balhanes. This is crazy.
This is a modern dude?
No, dude. No.
He's a rabbi in the Mishnah and the Talmud.
You think he's somewhere, I think he's like 1700s. He's not even that.
No. He's in the Mishnah and the Talmud.
Oh, is he?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Hey, dude, it's hard to keep track of all these guys. You know
this.
Anyways, apparently there's a story where he was going against the authorities at the time, and there was prostitutes in the area, and he dressed up as a knight in order to like
Dude, I'm just imagining the modern Jew,
wait.
like
Dude, you don't even
hunchbacked in a knight's armor.
Dude, just
Oh
wait,
my
just wait.
God.
This is insane, okay? And he goes to the harlot,
The brothel.
and she's a Jew. She's a Jewish girl, by the way, and she's a whore. And he basically is telling her like, "Oh, why are you here?" And like, and honestly, I should pull up the story and read it because it's so absurd. But it comes out to something like, you know,
They were going to catch him, and then...
well, like you know, if you're going to do prostitution, do Jewish prostitution. Like he literally, it's like insane, dude. And then the two guards, he's going to go pay off the guards to let this girl go or something like that. And then they're like, who the hell are you, right? And they decide to like chase him, right? And they're chasing him, and he runs into a brothel, right? And he goes in, and there's like 3 different recountings of what happens. I'm pretty sure that he like stuck his finger.
They tried to catch
into
him
a
with
pot
like non-kosher
of non-kosher food, and then all of a sudden they said, "Well, that can't be the Reish Lakesh because he's got his finger in
Rabbi
a pot
Meir.
of whatever the fuck his name is, dude. His name and his fingers in there, right? And he's got the invisibility cloak on, right? And then the second recounting of that story from the Gemara response is that he actually turned. He went to kiss a woman, like a prostitute in there, but really that woman was Eliyahu Hanavi.
So as long as it was a man, it was fine.
Isn't that
What the
insane?
fuck?
So
It's better to kiss
Yeah.
a man
You
than to
heard-
kiss a woman.
like this is
No, but what about
useless
the
information?
licking the finger? So also they tried to frame him with like the non-kosher food. So he stuck his finger in and then licked his other finger. And so they knew. So he tricked them all. You know?
Yeah,
shit.
yeah.
He's a genius.
What's his name?
Oh my God.
Mayor Balinese. Well, the story gets worse is because this guy's wife, whose name was Bruria, who was actually like
She's
a
the
feminist
best,
woman who was like always like
Mhm.
challenging the students in the yeshiva. So he decided to test his wife. And so he took one of his students and said, "Please seduce my wife. I want to test her."
Mhm.
And so his young student goes and seduces his wife and sleeps with her.
Oh my God.
And then his wife commits suicide because she realizes she's an adulteress. But it's like, look at these fucking people, dude.
Yeah,
like
yeah.
they're bad people, right? There's another story of like the Rabbi Yehuda Hanassi, who was the guy who wrote down the entire Mishnah, right? So he started this whole shit, right? So there's a story that one of his colleagues was like, "Rebbe," he's like, "I'm gonna make you dance like a dog at your son's wedding, and your wife will pour wine for me." And he's like, "What? Okay." And then his son's wedding comes, and this rabbi goes over to him and was like, "Rebbe, what does the word toiva mean?" Okay, now toiva means abomination, right? So he's like, abomination. He's like, "No, it's not what it means. I'll tell you what it really means." And he's like, tell me, please, tell me the Torah, right? And he says, "Only if you dance like a clown in front of me." And so Rebbe starts dancing like a clown, right? And then he says, also, your wife's gonna have to pour wine for me, right? So he gets the rabbi's wife to pour wine for him as he's dancing, just so he can tell him the real meaning of the word abomination, right? Which is, of course, these people are abominations, and their entire culture is disgusting. And he's literally having a married woman pour wine for him and making a mockery of this guy, so that because they're so righteous, they just want to know the truth of the Torah. You know, I mean, they're lying scum. That's the bottom line. They're lying scum, and they want to present themselves like the saviors of Judaism. You know, it's despicable. It's actually so despicable, and the proof is in the pudding. The minute that the gates were lifted on the ghettos and the emancipation began, the Jews ran for it. The majority of Jews are not Orthodox.
Oh my God, dude! Like, I'm just saying that here it is. I found it, by the way. So that initial thing when I was telling you that like Rabbi Meir said that like, the woman like do like have intercourse with Jewish men instead of with like non. That's not actually what happened. I'll tell you the real story here. First of all, I'll quote it for those who want to know. I would also, before I jump into this whole conversation right now that we're diving into with these hilarious stories, it should be enjoyable, because from a simply a fanatical and even a storytelling basis, it's actually kind of funny, you know. It's actually very funny.
Except your conclusion wouldn't be that these are the good guys.
This of course not, but this is what the Orthodox, the Hasidic, and the Chabad head is filled with.
Yeah.
This, not God's Torah, not God's law.
And they believe it's good.
You literally, dude,
they believe these are the greatest people that ever lived.
Let's say the story, right? So here it is in Avodah Zarah 18a through b. They listed here a sister-in-law in a brothel escaping by going into a brothel. So Bruria, the wife of Rabbi Meir, was a daughter of Rab Hanania ben Tardon. She said to Rabbi Meir, "It is a disrespectful matter for me that my sister is sitting in a brothel. You must do something to save her." So Rabbi Meir took a vessel full of money and went out. He said to himself, if no transgression was committed with her, a miracle will be performed, and if she committed a transgression, no miracle will be performed for her. It's just like God's works, right? Like instead of like punishment and for transgression, like just no miracle. It's like how you deal with kids, right? Like they're having a tantrum, and you're like, "I won't give you $100 if you stop." Like that one works real good.
No, these
right?
people are colossally
Anyways,
immature.
this is actually how they teach their children and how they live. They want to take on Rabbi Meir. And so this is the story of Rabbi Meir. So he went out and he dressed as a Roman knight, and he said, "According to my wishes, I wish to engage with intercourse with you." He says that to his sister-in-law. For some reason, doesn't recognize him. She said to him, "I am menstruating and cannot." He said, "I will wait." And then she said to him, "There are many women in the brothel, and there are many women here who are more beautiful than I." So she sounds familiar with the brothel. He said to himself, "I can conclude from her responses that she did not commit a transgression, as she presumably said this to all who come." It's kind of a crazy presumption based on the dialogue. Doesn't sound like that at all. But let's keep pushing. Rabbi Meir went over to a guard and said to her, "Give her to me." The guard said to him, "I fear that if I do so, I will be punished by the government." Rabbi Meir said to him, "Take the vessel full of dinars, or money, and give half to the government as a bribe, and half will be with you." The guard said, "But when the money is finished, what shall I do?" He said, "God of Meir, answer me, and you will be saved." Say, "God of Meir, answer me, and you will be saved." Okay. Yeah, not Yahweh, God of Meir.
No, by the way,
But let's keep going.
Not God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob.
No. God of Meir.
They're idol worshippers. You know that to this day the Jews say this on his. They go like they say a prayer. They say, "God of Meir, answer me." Like Jews will say.
Yeah. Dude, I mean, as I'm saying, if you want to go to the biggest Burning Man Jewish event on earth, just go to Ukraine and go worship Rabbi Nachman.
Yeah.
So he's there for all. He's right there in his grave. Rabbi Meir said to me, "Okay, you will not see." Oh, yes. The guard said to him, "And who can say that this is the case, that I will be saved from this utterance?" He's like, "You will now see. There are these carnivorous dogs that would devour people." Rabbi Meir took a clod of earth, threw it at them, and they came to devour him. And he said, "God of Rabbi Meir, answer me." And then the dogs left him alone. And then after seeing this, the guard gave the daughter of Rabbi Hanania ben Tardon to Rabbi Meir. Doesn't really know sister-in-law. Ultimately, the matter was heard in the king's court, and the guard who had brought and taken was hanged. I guess God of Rabbi Meir didn't help him that much. "God of Meir, answer me." And then it did. So, okay. And the guard who was brought, take him to be hanged, said, "God of Meir, answer me." And then they lowered him down, and they were unable to hang him. What is this? Like, what, did his neck become stone or something? What are they unable?
Well, just remember, like,
he said to them, this was the incident that occurred, and they related the story to him. And they went and engraved the image of Rabbi Meir at the entrance of Rome, where it would be seen by anybody. And they said, anybody who sees this man, they should bring him here. So one day, the Romans saw Rabbi Meir, and they ran after him, and he ran outside, and they entered a brothel. He entered a brothel to hide.
He's back in the brothel.
He's always back in the brothel.
By the way, just from that, the Rabbi Meir, or God of Meir, help me. That's not an act of God at all.
No, it's terrible.
It's just that they heard that a Jew...
Who is the God of the Jews?
Also, this story is made up.
Yahweh. Of course it's made up, but let's finish it. If you want to come to the conclusion that it's made up.
They heard a Jew framed a knight, so
love this.
Of course they're going to spare him.
Some say he then escaped, captured, because he saw food cooked by Gentiles and dipped... Gentiles.
Genitals.
And he dipped his finger in the food and tasted it with the other finger, and thereby fooled them into thinking that he was eating their food, which they knew Rabbi Meir would not do.
Oh, okay.
Bro, I swear to you, I'm literally like, I need a new invisibility cloak. This is the one, dude. And some say that he escaped detention because Elijah came, appeared to them as a prostitute, and embraced Rabbi Meir. So he wasn't really having sex with a prostitute.
Fantasies.
It wasn't really.
It was the spirit of a man.
Elijah, the holy prophet Elijah, was there.
Came down.
Who wouldn't want to make out with Elijah?
The Romans who were chasing him said, "Heaven forbid! if this were Rabbi Meir, he would not act in this manner. First of all, the Romans, that's the funniest
He would
thing.
rather...
The Romans are like super, super learned on Jewish
yeah,
law
yeah.
and stuff, which is hilarious.
So yeah, he would rather embrace a man sexually than a
Anyways,
woman.
Rabbi Meir arose and he fled. And then these are those who say that he fled in this incident. And there are those say that he fled due to embarrassment from the incident involving his wife, Beruria. Which is one last
what
thing,
happened to his wife, Beruria?
Yeah, we can stop reading.
No,
I
already.
But the point
I told the story. He had his student seduce her, and
it worked.
And it worked.
Oh, shit.
No, I mean, again,
but you know, it's really silly. I don't even like spending my time here. The fact that I've read any of these things and it's made its way into my mind is absurd. This is the sort of thing that's plaguing the minds of young Jewish men. When it shouldn't be. They should be learning how to work. They should be learning how to be kind and treat their neighbors like themselves. They should know for sure that they should not steal. They should pay their workers on times, that they're supposed to treat their fellows like themselves. They're supposed to treat all people like themselves, not this elitism sense of, the Gentile Jew. There's literally one law for the proselyte and the native alike, okay? So there's one law for all of mankind, and Jesus Christ picked it up too. Jesus was a Jew. And he gave it to the whole world. The American people ran with that. They took their Bibles and they went and established a whole nation, and it was blessed. And one of the interesting quotes, I'll just read it directly because it's so close, but in Leviticus, you have chapter 25, 18 to 19, follow my decrees and be careful to obey my laws, and you will live safely in the land, and the land will yield its fruit, and you will eat your fill and live there in safety. If the Jews deny following God's law, then obviously they're abandoned from the land, but I believe that promise happened for the American people as well, and God blessed the land and made it fruitful, and they got to dwell there for many, many years.
Yeah. I mean, what's really heartbreaking is, and I've never heard it from actual rabbis or Jewish people, because I hear stories from you guys about what they believe, and you guys are a lot more educated in those stories. But when I saw this podcast, it made me realize that they practice reading they read the Mishnah and the Gemara, and all it's saying is that they make all these crazy stories and arguments, and they put them in there so that they cannot form any sort of conclusion. And I saw it with this man. Like, he didn't even have an answer for his own proposition.
Right.
The only answer was, it's unclear, therefore men need to get involved and change the law.
Yeah, and you just have to keep reading their books until the death of you. Literally. Yeah. Like, that is what they do.
And but what's interesting is that when his son-in-law came into the picture, that's when I saw the first Jewish person that's really into that start defending the absurdity of the law, right? So like there's people who are very well versed in it, and they come to no conclusion, therefore they just obey men. And then there's those who are very new to it, because he's very young, I'm assuming, and they just defend one or the other arguments that are laid out.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's the position you're in. Either you have to defend the indefensible, or you're just an embodiment of it. You know?
They even brought up a practical thing, right? And it's a question that anybody would also think about, is like, if one man destroys $8 billion worth of property through a fire, is he obligated to pay that $8 billion whether or not he has it?
Right.
Well, first of all, that's a made-up scenario, right? Like, no one knows if someone started the fire out here in LA.
No one knows who started it. But I'm saying, like, assuming that we could trace it back to you, the law does say that you're responsible for what your fire burns. So go figure.
You might spend the rest of your life paying for it.
Yeah,
people died because of this, and that makes those people murderers, and they should be killed.
If it was intentional.
Of course it was intentional. You literally have arsonists waiting for wind to come out, and then they start lighting shit on fire.
That's intentional.
They're diabolical.
No, but even if it's not intentional, you're still responsible.
We're responsible financially. But it's not
right?
No, exactly. But you're still responsible for the fire.
You're still responsible for the deaths as well.
Yeah,
in the Torah, you have the city of refuge, where somebody who did an accidental death could flee. At this point, if there's no fleeing, you're gonna, like, manslaughter, even to...
well, the Torah actually says...
Manslaughter is its own issue.
Well, the Torah says that if you kill the guy and he's not in a refuge city, it's not considered murder.
Oh yeah, so exactly. So it would mean that
Which is
without the city of refuge.
Does it specify that it has to be by an avenger?
Yeah, it says it has to be by an avenger of the blood.
Yeah.
Which again doesn't mean they have to be a relative or it's just someone who feels the need to avenge
the blood.
Somebody who feels the need to avenge it.
Friend,
Absolutely.
so like...
I mean, this is the earliest statement in Genesis, which is, you kill and then people will want to kill you.
Yeah.
And this
he
is
who
the fact
spills
of
the
life.
blood of man by man, his blood will be spilled.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, look, we can move into Israel because I think
we can. This is a perfect transition, by the way, because as
sure.
like a general statement, as a blanket of everything that we're talking about, this sort of nonsense in literature is what's filling the head with young Jewish men. Okay?
For sure.
And if you're not filling your head with that, then you're typically unobservant and you're like a Zionist or you're an Israeli or you're born somewhere here in the States.
There was just
a
a newly engaged couple that was murdered at a Zionist conference in Washington, D.C.
Wait, what?
Yesterday.
For what?
Like some Free Palestine guy came in and was like, Free Palestine, shot up, married, like a couple who just got engaged.
Oh, he just killed.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're going to jump to that in just a moment. The solution to the Israelites and the Jews all across the world not being the target is if they're following God's decrees and ordinances, not this 2,000-year-old Mickey Mouse tradition that they've been running with. It's done them no good historically, tactically, in any regard.
Yeah.
And
when you go to the state of Israel, what you have is either Mickey Mouse ultra-Orthodox Jews who are retarded religious extremists who believe in nonsense, or you have ultra-secular Jews who don't give a shit about God.
Yeah, both are problems.
I actually heard this from you. You had said exactly that. I saw one of your shorts. You said in order for Jews to not be targeted, they have to follow the decrees.
Yeah.
Right? And I sat and thought about it because I would expect, no, you'd still be a target regardless. Like every nation doesn't like you. Like God's on your side. But then I thought about it a little bit more, and that would make sense, right?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, out of curiosity, you run a business, right? Or you manage a business. If you know that the people who are running and managing the business, they don't steal, they don't kill, they don't murder, they don't commit adultery, they pay people on time, they never, they're kind to other people, they support the destitute. That is the sort of person that if any of those people, and they have the skills of running a government, they would run an amazing and non-corrupt government. It would have good outcomes. Same thing with the business. Same thing with the home. And if you're a simpleton and you live like that, you'll have nothing but love and care.
Well,
if you're a very brilliant man, then basically all the things that you do and the skills that God has given you and the gifts that you've developed in time, people will understand with faith that this is going to work out. And beyond all of these other things, you actually have the protection of God. The second you step away from those things, you don't have this protection. And that's what's disgusting to me about the Zionistic movement, which is it's all based off a false premise. The Jews can't genuinely claim that they have the right to the land. Like, let's look at the history of Zionism. They were literally willing to say, we go live in Africa. We'll live in Africa just so the Jews can have a home. So can you imagine that they came into like a 50-50 like toss of a coin, like we can live in Africa or we can live in Israel? And they're like, Africa. Like why even have Israel as the other 50%? Why? Because they controlled it for 1,500 years, because God gave it to him, because there were miracles performed and there were great kings and temples and history and a holy people that taught the world how to live correctly. Clearly, that was confirmed by this nation in America, because if you're an American, you have the 5 books of Moses, which have all the laws that Christ told the people to follow, not like the Sadducees, but as it's actually written.
Not like the
and
Pharisees.
he's not like the Pharisees.
The Sadducees were the ones who just follow the Torah.
Yeah.
Dude, I'm so sick of the damn labels. I can't even think about them anymore. People are like, so what are you, a Karaite, a Sadducee, a Pharisee? I'm like, dude, I'm just an observant Jew. Like, I'm an observant Jew. And at the end of the day, I want to live. I want to live. And I think I should be allowed to live. I don't think that I should be hated for being a good man who hasn't done terrible crimes of any regard and has been providing jobs and work for people. I live here in California, in Los Angeles. I'm 25 years old. There's a chaos amongst men and women. the religious institutions, they don't want to get them married. And there's all these regulations and laws trying to keep you down so you can't make a living. Beyond this, you have the fact that Kanye West literally released a song saying "Hail Hitler," and the second that's been on the internet, there has already been a change in people's tolerance of "Hail Hitler." Mm-hmm. Let's be completely clear here. This is not a Jewish thing that's the problem. Okay, yes, there was a Jewish genocide. Between 5 and 6 million Jews were killed, and it was a terrible, terrible thing. But there was between 70 and 85 million deaths during World War II, okay? That means that between 75 and 80 million people died because of Hitler, okay? We're talking Americans, Europeans, everybody, all over the place. How are we not furious that one of the greatest celebrities on the internet, the most popular with the most influence, literally glorifying that man? Hail Hitler, okay? This is a problem for everybody. This is not just a problem for the Jews. It's an additional problem for the Jews because the whole narrative of the nation, or the whole narrative of Hitler's cause is, let's put enough propaganda into people's minds that all of the destruction, death, and war that has ever come from mankind, it all comes from the Jews.
Yeah, and
that
at
terrible,
the center,
terrible lie.
And at the center of World War II, we'll have a systemized operation to murder every single Jew possible.
Yeah.
Like
well, look, it's all
made that
based
a
on
priority.
violence. It's all based on violence and on hate. And if you can ramp up people's violence and hate, then they'll actually go out of their way in order to start killing people like they're insects. Okay.
Yeah.
We just sprayed up the whole gym here, and these flies were literally like on the floor, and there was, and I was like having to sweep them up, you know, and I was making a joke like fly genocide, you know. But like seriously, like I have comments on my Instagram being like, "Oh, an extra small oven for this guy," you know. Like, what? Like that is absurd. Like people are literally texting me, Nazis are back. They're just making a statement. The Nazis are back, right?
Yeah.
I haven't been hearing this on the internet other than since
it's new.
Kanye released that song. He's empowered a lot of people in order to do this. And that's all it took, by the way. That's all it took in order for the very
one person to put a
unrealistic
target on himself.
Horror of the World War II. Like the amount of people before the war actually happened were like, nah, there's no way. Like there's no way that this guy can do that. Like, come on, like you're just stressing, you're a conspiracy theorist, you know, oh, you're too aggressive.
I mean, that's
and
why
angry.
the Jews stayed behind in Germany.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They just thought everything would work out because it's worked out under their definition of worked out for the past thousands of years.
Yeah.
Dude,
No,
Right? Like, oh, they're just going to
propaganda,
place
man.
restrictions on us, and they're going to keep placing restrictions, but we'll weasel our way out and like find loopholes and bribe people, and it'll be okay.
Yeah.
And then they just started chopping them down.
No, it's frightening.
Well, look, I just heard something crazy. Let's see if we can just Google it, right? Because like Google obviously has no propaganda on it, but we'll just trust Google, you know. How many Palestinian deaths have there been in Gaza? Okay, so first one, recent assessments on the number of Palestinians militant dead at 20,000. Okay, let's look deeper.
That's militant.
Okay. Yeah, but I'm just saying, let's give it to them. 45,000, okay? 50,000. And let's see what it says on the low end.
50,000 is the going number.
No, but let's see what it says on the low end so we have a gauge so that people can understand what's going on.
But then I heard them say that they believe, like, some like super anti-Israel pro-Gaza people are like, no, they murdered like 300,000 people already. Like, this is a Holocaust. Like, people are so eager.
This is the point that I'm trying to
say
make.
that Israel
on the
is
low
committing
on the
a
low
Holocaust.
end, on the low end,
crazy.
according to these demographics, it's as low as 1,000 people. Okay, so you have between 1,000 and 50,000 people who've died, and then you have
I don't think
a
anyone
tiny
says 1,000.
little place. First of all, there's a population of about 2 million plus people.
No,
Let's-
it's like one point something.
Well, okay, well it says 2 million, right?
Okay.
It says 2 million.
Yeah, sorry, 2 million. You're right.
2 million people. Let's say 50,000 died. This is an arbitrary war in the Middle East. And if you want to know why it was started because on October 7th, there was a terrible attack on Israel, and they're attacking Hamas. And the Hamas group has been identified to live in Gaza, and there has been a lot of Hamas killed, majority Hamas killed, not innocent Palestinians and bystanders. There is no justification for war and the deaths that happen there. But this is a seriously arbitrary war in the Middle East right now, okay? If it's not arbitrary, it's because the land of Israel really has been given to the Jewish people and it's a holy land, okay? In which case, what the hell is going on? Like, I just want to save my own neck at this point.
Yeah,
Like, how is this cool that me as an American citizen, I'm an American citizen, okay? I'm going to have to be worried about people on the street, just like World War II again, because people are literally chanting Hail Hitler. Hitler's even dead right now and people are saying Hail Hitler.
By the way, the Hamas
Worshipping
group
the
is
dead rabbi.
obviously a terrorist group, and they're not, if you're going to give any sort of respect to the rules of war, they're not following that at all.
No, they're
They're
not.
using hospitals, they're using
Exactly.
homes, they're using...
No, first of
they're
all,
digging
Gaza is
tunnels.
a very densely populated small city,
I mean,
and they're
yeah.
the Hamas fighters are under buildings, under hospitals and tunnels, and they embed themselves in civilian population specifically to make the civilian death toll go up. So
Exactly,
that
which is against the rules of war, by the way. You're not
of course.
supposed to do
I
that.
mean, again, right? If there was, let's say we were in California here in Los Angeles, and there was some sort of war that took place here, there would be people in neighboring countries and in places that are close because they're American citizens that would be offering resources and help because we're the United States of America, right? Like probably go to Nevada or something. I bet you there'll be some support there, that is not happening in the Palestinian area at all, not to mention that Palestine is just a name given to people.
Palestine was never a country that existed.
It was never a country that existed. But let's just say that a huge populous people, they're not giving their people that help. And you got this tiny population of Israelis that this is going to be compared to some sort of genocide. Not to mention I have my actual problems with Israel and how they're dealing with things. Mm-hmm. If the people are not following the laws, then of course in their government system,
they're bound
corruption.
to do immoral things.
The same way that if I felt comfortable that they actually followed God's laws, then there would be justice that's implemented and I wouldn't need to check over my corner or have tabs on them all the time, right?
And look, I think they're bound to do immoral things. However, people who just can't get enough of saying that Israel is committing a genocide and a Holocaust, they're not arguing in good faith. You can say that Israel's killing too many civilians. If that's your position you want to take, be like, Israel's killing too many civilians in this war. Okay, go ahead, knock yourself out. But what the fuck is wrong with you to call this a genocide? It's not a genocide. A genocide means you're systematically wiping out a group of people. That's not what they're doing. They're fighting combatants. Hamas is an actual army. The fact that Israel hasn't been able to win this war means that they actually are fighting someone.
And by the way, they're not an army. They're terrorists.
Dude,
they exist within a country.
And they're
that
armed
they're not
terrorists. They're armed terrorists who embed themselves in civilian populations. And Israel with a huge military still has not been able to defeat Hamas. Mm-hmm. And it's been over a year and a half, right? And so what does that tell you? That tells you that there's a real war going on. And again, civilian casualty in war is horrific. And by the way, there has been and there continues to be worse civilian casualties in other wars throughout all of history and currently in other places in the world. So war is a very sad thing. And people in their moral infancy, all they can look at is, oh my God, I see dead babies and I don't like that.
Dude, you know that in two weeks in the Ukrainian war, there was 25,000 deaths. Okay, 2 weeks. We're going to go for a 2-year war going on between Palestinians and the death tolls at 50,000 as a genocide. Yeah. Nobody's talking about what's going on in Ukraine.
No, definitely not calling it a genocide.
No, definitely not. Definitely not.
That's what I'm saying. It's preferential treatment for Israel. They specifically want to say that Israel is committing a Holocaust. Yeah. And they get so much pleasure off it. I see them. I see them. They're like Israel committing a Holocaust, committing a Holocaust. It's like, what the fuck is wrong with you?
Look, the only thing that for sure is problematic is just that, like, Israel is not dealing with this.
No, Israel sucks. Like, we're the first ones to criticize Israel. Israel is not a God. It's not a God-fearing country. They're bound to do immoral things because they don't follow God. They don't follow the Torah. They suck. Their messaging is terrible. They're arrogant. I mean, we can go off on Israel easily. but there needs to be a clear moral compass here.
Yeah.
You can't call excessive civilian death toll in a war a genocide. That's just false messaging.
No, but if you wanted to, what I just typed in was the list of genocides in history, and the first one that came up was the Palestinian one.
You're kidding me,
Yeah.
just on Google.
Oh, it was Wikipedia.
Yeah,
specifically.
Wikipedia. Yeah, no,
I mean,
there's no
But I'm
propaganda.
saying that
no
they're
prop-
like, it's
Dude, it's insane.
I want
It's
to
insane, dude.
give a
It's insane.
pointer to. I think I can figure out the source of like where all this stems from. Like
Mhm.
everybody against the Jews, because like the Jewish people have a trauma that they've gone through for many years, but also the rest of the population has had a trauma that's resulted in, I think, in this like it's a racist thing against the
Sure.
Jews, and I think it stems from the fact that the Jewish people have they have no tolerance for anybody outside of their circle.
Mhm.
They push everyone away from themselves.
Yeah.
I mean, also like you guys have an entire book that's created an entire world, and you're the smallest population, right? So so it feels like you guys have influence over the entire population. I mean, that's why all these conspiracy theories about Jews ruling
Israel's
the world,
behind everything.
if it feels real.
It
You know,
feels
like
real, but that's also why it's not real, and it's also what's so violent about the propaganda, which is saying that the root of all the issues in the world is the Jews.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So as a response to that, let's actually do a real genocide, right?
But by the way,
let's literally wipe out an entire people.
they can say
Mhm.
that the root of all evil is the Jews, and now they can actually point to the Jews and be like, look, they're genociding monsters. They're evil. They're like, they now can demonize the Jew to such an extent because the Jew is now the aggressor in this scenario. So before, the Jew was like locked up in a ghetto and they were still demonizing them. Now the Jew is killing Palestinian babies, right?
Mhm.
And so it's the anti-Semites' dream.
Well, you know, this
Oh,
is
yeah.
what's interesting is that being a Jew is not just an ethnicity; it's a
Mhm.
belief set.
Yeah.
So for me to be guilty of the Israelis' crimes is not fair.
Not at all.
It's not fair. It's not just. It's not right. I'm an American citizen. I'm an American. I grew up here. I've done my time. I've paid my taxes. I've done whatever it is I need to do in order to live here. And that this is an arbitrary war in the Middle East. That's actually what it breaks down to. And people are putting all this noise behind it because they actually want a target. They want a target in order to put all this violence towards again. If you can justify to me why it is that Hitler genocided all these Jews, then I suppose you have a good argument to go and do all of these things. This is
Mhm.
people who are truly pro-genocide, not the other way around. I'm not pro-genocide. I'm not happy about what's going on in Palestine. I'm so sorry that all these people are having to die. There is nothing to justify the terrible, terrible causes of war. And I pray and I hope that it ends very, very soon, okay? The terrorist group that is Hamas needs to go. And they are totally to blame for Palestinian deaths. Absolutely.
By the way,
They went and started a war with Israel, and then they brought it back to their hometown in Gaza, and they're going around in tunnels everywhere, and then people are getting killed, innocent people. But that isn't the Israelis' fault. That is Hamas's fault. If anything, the Palestinians should be aiding the Israelis in order to get rid of Hamas. But that's not what they're doing either.
No, not at all. I mean, they would have to give up land if that's the case. And honestly, I think the Israelis should just use this as an excuse to take over.
I guess, yeah. I mean, that's the...
Well, first things first, as you said a couple times, they need to just follow the laws of God, and then things will go good. But
There's even laws of war, you know that, right? There's laws of war. It just says if you're going to cause war on these
kill
people,
the male combatants.
you have before you go in, you have to tell them that
to make
you
peace.
guys, you call the peace, but also that they should leave.
Well, yeah,
you
you
give
try
them
to
time
make
to
peace
leave.
with them, and then you
I'm
kill
just saying,
the
like-
male combatants and not the women and children.
Well, from my understanding of reading the 5 books, it's very, very clear that the laws are saying, we're going to attack you and we're going to cause war. You can leave and you have due time to leave. We don't need to do all this killing. Okay, that's obviously not how like Hitler operated, right?
Is that the case? I
second-
thought it was you try to make peace and then you take over and they have to abide by your rules.
Yeah,
No, that's another scenario.
I don't
another
recall
scenario.
what you're saying in the Torah, but
I can
like,
find
tell
it
them
for
to
you.
evacuate.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't recall that in the Torah, but to the point it's not really
Either
that
way,
relevant. The point is you have to give them a chance. You have to give them a chance.
That is part of the negotiations that should be taking place in
You have to
general.
give them a chance to survive. And again, remember, this is part of an extravagant plan because Iran funds Hamas, right? And Iran actually is like the evil regime in that region who's funding terrorist groups like Hezbollah in Lebanon. I met a guy from Lebanon who said that ever since Hezbollah has been there, they've destroyed Lebanon. And the same thing with Hamas has destroyed Gaza.
I mean,
right? The problem is, here's the problem, is that Israel has 5 million Palestinians living there, and they have the West Bank is Palestine and Gaza is Palestine, and they really need to give them a state, but they also can't give them a state because they're too violent, and they also don't want to accept the state because they want more land. And it's like, the problem is there's no solution. That's the real problem, which is like, again, at this point, it's a focused thing. They got to take over. They got to defeat Hamas, But again, they're not able to do it. That's what's so scary. Is like they're not doing it. They're not succeeding, And that just kind of says that we don't know. We don't know what the outcome is because there has to come to some agreement, And no one wants to come to an agreement.
I'm definitely with you. There. I don't think that there's such great solutions being drawn up. And again, the whole idea that Israel is supposed to have the land of Israel without the history behind them that confirms that they're a holy people that are supposed to follow God's law is super absurd, and it's likely to end up in failure. That's been the historical narrative, and it's also the promise from God.
It's already happened twice.
Well,
and back then they even had it was even more of a religious state, and they had a temple, and it's still destroyed.
And again, like all of this comes from the
By the way, did you know that
separation.
they were Asian Jews? I didn't know that was a thing.
Are they?
Yeah, there was Asian Jews. That's crazy.
Like they
lived in like India and like
India,
China,
I've heard of,
too.
Yes, I mean Jews migrated to there.
Yeah.
I mean, Jews literally migrated to all four corners of the earth.
Crazy.
It's insane. And by the way,
Asian
that's
Jews.
foretold in Deuteronomy as well.
Yeah,
well, that's why it
spread
needs to
out.
be established that it is not only a ethnicity, but it is also a belief set. It's a belief set. Well, guys, I mean, all of this is depressing as can be. God willing, it doesn't affect our lives in such a negative way.
I agree that just like,
no more death, no more killing, put a pause to the whole
Hitler.
thing.
Yeah, and
definitely don't bring back Hitler. My God, you're talking about freaking genocide right now.
Yeah,
just so you understand how bad propaganda has affected people's minds. I talk to a good amount of people who reach out to me, and there are some people who are very knowledgeable in history and have good points. And even people who are equipped with that sort of knowledge, I still heard that more, what is it? The guys who go in there and
exterminate
journalists. More journalists have been killed in Palestine than in World War I and World War II combined.
Wow.
That is impossible, okay? We're talking about just in World War II alone, between 75 and 85 million total deaths. How can you pretend that the terrible tragedy, the death of journalists? I don't need to go make an accounting. I don't need to make an accounting of journalists. Whoever bought that is basically saying one way or another that what's going on
Israel's the worst thing
in Palestine is as bad as World War I and World War II combined.
And it's worse.
Oh, it's worse. It's worse. I'm saying that is an obvious manipulation.
It's insane.
Manipulation. You have no idea of a reference or scope of disaster in history, and only those people are talking about it. And why did they feel so a part of it? Because you can send me a video on Instagram where some kid got shot in the head and his brains are spilling out, and everybody's got this damn phone where they have to feel so interconnected and part of the help and part of the peace. All you fucking haters about Palestine with your phones like this, you think you're really helping Palestine even if Israel is the problem? Like, what is your hate speech to an American citizen affect you in any way? Yeah. The people are sick.
No, they're not heroes. They're not heroes. They're terrible. And again, like, it's immoral. You have to judge people as individuals. Fathers shall not die for the sins of their sons. Sons shall not die for the sins of their fathers. Every man dies for their own sin. How can you look at a Jew and say, oh, you're a Jew, you deserve to die? You know, it's unfair. As you said, judge me as an individual. I'll judge you as an individual. That's the only way forward, because otherwise we're just stuck in this tribal insanity. And you know, Jews are guilty of it. Non-Jews are guilty of it. Like we just have to give it up.
There's this great illusion that, just to add to your point, that people have now, because they think that we're so advanced and we've progressed throughout time. And so when we look backwards, it seems to feel like history, right? It feels like fake.
Yeah. Except
doesn't
the
seem
same
real.
thing is going on.
So, like, of course, the modern thing is going to be always worse than before.
Yeah, exactly. If anything, it's
real.
worse. It's worse. You know, but it's crazy.
Well, again, if the Jews have been a part of history and there's been war, death, killing, murder, genocide, then the reason for all the issues is the Jews, right?
Yeah, exactly.
That's actually what is going
so
on.
Obvious.
That video that you sent me with Kanye West,
yeah,
quoting Hitler to Sneeko, literally saying that this is the real issue. Let me actually pull that video up.
The thing is that
it's the congregation.
Dude,
that's insane.
The congregation.
It's
retarded, dude. I mean, you can whip up any story using any combination of words, and make it make sense.
Exactly.
It's retarded. By the way, just to like make it clear that like Hitler was trying to find a scapegoat because they had to point to something of why Germany failed.
Exactly.
And
it's never you, right?
The Jewish people are always the easiest target.
Okay, so this is Kanye West, so people can hear Kanye West and Sneeko, his boy.
Hitler said even in his death, he will start World War III. One of his soldiers asked how. Hitler replied, the day mankind finds out what I was trying to defend this nation from, then that's the day World War III will start. For on that day, mankind will learn that I was trying to save my nation from the Freemasons, the Illuminati, the Jews. For if Americans win the war, then they will conquer the world and forever be enslaved to the Jews. And they would try to conquer God. That's accurate. That's exactly what happened.
That's accurate. That's exactly what happened. Well, it is what's happening.
Yeah.
People believe that.
He's a prophet.
He believes that. He's basically a prophet. That's how he feels of himself.
Yeah.
You know, this guy's crazy.
Yeah. He figured out the code.
That is insane.
So Hitler said even
he's saying that
even in his death.
When people start, the whole premise of this is that when people start to believe that what Hitler did was right, and that he's a righteous person, World War III will happen. And so let's all, as people, as human beings, try and stop that from happening, okay? And the propagandist point of view to who are really the problems, not Hitler, not World War I and World War II, right? And all the enemies that were historically a part of these horrors, that it's the Illuminati, the Freemasons, and the Jews. Literally, like, at the end of the day, with all this Illuminati shit, like, oh, because like there's a triangle on the dollar bill, like, bro, you want to go to a Holocaust museum? Like, go show me your stupid triangle on a dollar, and I'll go take you to a Holocaust museum. Like, what is the comparison here? You know, this is all propaganda bullshit to get people to start World War III, and that's what they're looking for. And I'm, of course, extremely, extremely worried and upset about this. And I'm also way less casual than the typical person as this not being a real scenario, okay?
Oh, yeah.
Because, like, overnight, I just went from, like, posting stuff on social media with not having too much of a care. I work and I do whatever. I want to just spread God's word to, like, the Nazis are back. Like, we're going to put you in an oven, dude. Da-da-da-da-da-da.
Yeah, the Jews can't cower away right now. It's literally the same thing as in Germany.
Yeah. You have to be delusional to think that history will not repeat itself. And by the way, one of the things that they do while praising Hitler and saying the Jews are at fault, they also simultaneously deny the Holocaust and say that it didn't really happen and there was only like 200,000 Jews that died, even though all of Europe's Jewry disappeared from 1939 to 1945. My own great-grandparents and great-uncles and included, like, they're all dead. Where did they go, you stupid bitch? You know, like, I grew up knowing people who were personally in Auschwitz. Like, it disgusts me, and we're fucking screwed when you have these lunatics who actually want to deny reality and deny their own capacity for evil by saying that Hitler was a good guy. And, well, guess what? Then it can easily repeat itself. Because if you're not even willing to acknowledge that it happened,
as a throwback, what's probable is that it'll happen again. What's possible is that we all follow God.
Yeah, exactly right.
Right? We need to follow. We need to follow God, and things will work out well for
If
everyone.
anything, the
Absolutely.
probability is that it will happen again if we don't wake up and make a huge change as humanity, as an entire human race, to start following God's laws. Jews, non-Jews, it doesn't matter at all. It matters. Be moral. Do not murder. Do not steal. Do not commit adultery. Enough. Like enough. The 10 Commandments are the truth, and it will be the guardian for the destruction of humanity, because if we don't follow it, we're all done.
Yeah. Well, I mean, right now it just seems most people are probably viewing it as like a projector, like it's just showcasing things. Nothing's going to happen, and we're far away from it.
Exactly,
So.
it's on the phone. It's all on the
You
phone.
got a bunch of docile, dumbass people who decided to be hateful Instagram commenters instead of capable people who can think and fight wars.
The phone is the best propaganda machine the world has seen.
Help this from not happening.
Dude, everyone has their own personal propaganda machine in their pocket.
Oh, yeah.
Where they believe that they're receiving like Hitler had to rely on his speeches.
Hey. A good analogy to use, Tower of Babel, right? We're using this phone, this technology to unite us.
Yeah.
Right. But there's confusion.
Exactly. To unite us, to give us one language, but it's more
exactly.
confusion, more destruction. Absolutely. No, it's a consistent narrative throughout all of history. And again, Hitler had to rely on like the newspapers and like the radio and his speeches and his rallies.
Oh, yeah.
This is just, you can streamline this to the whole world. You know, everyone is united in speech, and it won't look
it's
too
actually crazy because I'm watching this
movie
called One Life, which is actually made in 2024, which is interesting. It's got Anthony Hopkins, which to me is like top G, best actor ever.
Super sexy.
Yeah, dude, he's such a stud, dude. Stud muffin, Anthony Hopkins. I love that guy. And he's brilliant in this film. I'm only like a quarter of the way through, and it's about Germany invading Czechoslovakia, and this British man who came on his own accord to Czechoslovakia to save a bunch of children, right? And he actually succeeded in that. But also, I suppose the other part of the story that I haven't seen yet is that he's haunted by not have done enough in his mind, right? Because of the horrors that were so real that actually happened. And the reason I'm mentioning it is because I believe it's like France, Britain, and a third country were the ones who negotiated with Hitler to give him Czechoslovakia to save their own backs, right? And that like, this is what people do. It's what they've done, and it can easily happen again. The second that they gave over Czechoslovakia to Germany, everybody was aware that their lives were going to hell, that their children were going to die, and everything was going to be terrible because the person that Hitler was and what he was doing on a day-to-day basis was the worst thing ever. And that is war, that is death, that is crime, that is injustice, that is Satanism. Not the fucking Illuminati and the Jews and who's the third group?
Mossad.
The Mossad, sure, we'll throw them as well.
Secret agencies.
These conspiracy theorist propagandas.
Yeah, right. I mean,
it's their life. It's
we
literally
give them
the source of their life.
So much of our mental capacity. Yet
and
the ones who are obviously evil are just like out of the picture.
Oh, we need to call a spade all the time, and people need to be very, very clear about that. There's this like game of picking and choosing that like what happened in Ukraine is terrible and what's going on is terrible, right? That is bad. What is happening in Israel is also bad. Let's deal with that problem one at a time. Not like, oh, your problem in Israel is not a problem because you're not talking about what's going on in Ukraine. Right. Like, no, but also if we were all really smart, let's try and avoid World War III, right? And that's where all of us are involved, and that the death toll is way higher than 50,000 deaths.
Oh, yeah.
We're talking about in the millions here. Okay?
Billions. I mean, we live in a world right now with billions of people interconnected with nuclear weapons. The prospect of World War III
this is for something
could be the end of the world.
This is something to consider, though, that the war has already started, and it's a far more tactical way of waging war, which is an attack on the mind. And that has been going on for a long time now. And there is like what do you need to kill people when they're killing themselves?
Yeah.
You know, like that's literally what's happening.
But remember, the attack on the mind results in action in the real world because people become radical, they become crazy, and again, like I just told you, this guy in D.C., some like radical young free Palestine guy goes and just kills 2 Jews, a couple about to get engaged.
Look,
Yep.
one way or another, we're anti-murder, we're anti-killing and death. I don't like, again, 10 Commandments being the source of all of this. Like, I don't want war. I want to live as a free man. I want to live as God intended me to live, treating my neighbor as myself, and having a family, raising them, and doing the good work, you know, every day. I really hope that other people are more interested in that than killing their neighbor and you know, burning him in an oven. You know, so guys, I think we got to wrap this one up.
Yeah.
You know, we got things to do.
All right. Well,
All right. Well, may we all return to God, us and our children.
May He give us
Amen.
salvation.
Amen.
Amen. All right. God bless you guys.